My legs used to wake me up before the rest of me did. Not with pain exactly, more like a weight, a heaviness that started at the calves and pressed upward, like someone had filled them with wet sand overnight. I'd sit on the edge of the bed every morning, feet on the floor, and just wait. Wait for the circulation to remember what it was supposed to do. I'm 83 years old. I've had high blood sugar since my late 60s, and for years I told myself the heaviness in my legs was just age, that the weakness on the stairs was just age, that needing to hold the railing with both hands coming down was just age. It isn't age. Not entirely. There's something specific happening inside the legs of people with elevated blood sugar, something that has a name, a mechanism, and this is the part I want you to stay for, something that one specific food directly addresses at that mechanism level. A food so common, so cheap, so ordinary that you've probably walked past it 100 times at the grocery store without a second thought. I want to show you what I found, and I want to show you why my doctor never once mentioned it in 15 years of managing my blood sugar. Before I get to the food, I need you to understand what's actually happening in your legs, not the surface version, the real version. Because once you understand the mechanism, you'll understand why everything else you've tried may have only worked on the edges of the problem. Here's what high blood sugar does to the legs over time. Glucose in your bloodstream, when it stays elevated for months or years, attaches to proteins in a process called glycation. It's like rust forming on metal. And the first structures to show that rust are the smallest ones, the tiny capillaries and microvessels that run through your leg muscles and feed your peripheral nerves. When those vessels thicken and stiffen from glycation, two things happen simultaneously. Blood flow slows down. The muscles don't get the oxygen and nutrients they were designed to receive. And the peripheral nerves, the ones that run from your lumbar spine all the way down to your feet, start to lose their protective myelin coating. That coating is what allows nerve signals to travel fast and clean. Without it, signals get distorted, delayed, or lost. The heaviness you feel in the legs isn't just weakness. It's your muscles working harder because the fuel supply line is compromised. And the burning, the tingling, the numbness in the feet, those aren't symptoms of old age. They're symptoms of a nerve supply that's been slowly starved by years of high glucose exposure. That's the mechanism. And here's why it matters for what I'm about to show you. Every intervention that only targets blood sugar downstream, the medications, the general dietary advice, the eat less sugar instructions, those address the glucose itself. They do not directly address the microvessel damage in your legs. They do not directly address the muscle fuel deficit. They do not directly address the peripheral nerve environment. My doctor never had time to explain any of that. I want to be fair to him. An appointment runs 8, maybe 10 minutes. He's looking at numbers, he's adjusting medications. He's doing his job within a system that doesn't leave room for the kind of conversation I'm having with you right now. It's not a conspiracy, it's a constraint. But the constraint has a cost, and you're the one paying it. I started paying serious attention to this about 4 years ago, when I noticed that my leg strength on the same walk, the same flat path around my neighborhood, had dropped enough that I came home frustrated instead of settled. I'm not someone who accepts decline as a fixed sentence. I've been that way my whole life. So I started reading. I started talking to people who specialize in what happens to muscle and circulation in older adults with blood sugar issues. And I found something that surprised me. The food isn't exotic. It doesn't come from a laboratory. It's been sitting in the produce section of every grocery store in this country for decades. Sweet potato. Not the candied kind at Thanksgiving. Not the kind loaded with brown sugar and butter. Plain sweet potato. And not just eaten fresh, cooked and cooled. I'll explain exactly why the cooling matters, because it changes the chemistry of the food in a way that most people have never heard of. But before I tell you the mechanism, drop your fasting blood sugar number in the comments right now. Just the number. Because what I'm about to explain lands very differently depending on where you're starting. And I read those comments. I want to know where people are. Here's what research has consistently shown about sweet potato in the legs. First, the potassium. An 8-ounce sweet potato contains roughly 900 milligrams of potassium, more than a banana, which most people think of as the potassium food. Potassium is the mineral that governs how well your blood vessels dilate. When potassium is adequate, the smooth muscle lining your blood vessels can relax. The vessel opens, blood moves through. When potassium is low, and studies indicate that most adults over 65 with high blood sugar are chronically low in it, those vessels stay tighter than they should. Circulation to the legs suffers. The heaviness sets in. That's one layer. Second, the resistant starch. When you cook a sweet potato and then let it cool completely, fully cooled, refrigerated overnight, the starch molecules rearrange themselves into structures your small intestine cannot rapidly digest. Researchers call this retrograde resistant starch. Instead of breaking down in 45 minutes and flooding your blood with glucose, it releases slowly over 2 to 3 hours. Studies have found that this cooling process can reduce the glycemic response by up to 30% compared to the same potato eaten hot. That matters directly for the legs, because every time blood sugar spikes after a meal, that glycation process I described, the rusting of your microvessels, accelerates. Every meal that arrives slowly instead of as a spike is a meal that gives those vessels one less reason to thicken. Third, and this is the part that stopped me when I first found it, sweet potato contains a compound called chlorogenic acid. Research published in nutrition journals has linked chlorogenic acid to reduction of inflammatory markers in blood vessel walls, the same inflammatory environment that accelerates microvessel damage in people with elevated blood sugar. Not eliminating it, addressing it from a different direction than anything your medication does. 3 mechanisms, 1 food. Under $1 a serving at any grocery store in the country. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not telling you that sweet potato will fix your legs. I'm telling you that your legs are dealing with a specific biological problem and that this food addresses 3 aspects of that problem that most conventional advice completely ignores. Whether it's right for your situation is a conversation to have with your doctor. I've had that conversation. I'm glad I did. Now let me tell you what I actually do, because knowing the mechanism is one thing, making it work is another. I cook sweet potatoes on Sunday, a whole batch, nothing on them, no sugar, no syrup, sometimes a small amount of olive oil and a little salt. I let them cool completely and put them in the refrigerator. During the week, I eat them cold or at room temperature. Cold potato salad with olive oil and a squeeze of lemon, sweet potato slices over greens, room temperature alongside eggs in the morning. The cooling isn't optional. If you reheat them, the resistant starch structure collapses. The glycemic benefit disappears. You've converted it back to a high glycemic food. Eat it cold, eat it at room temperature, and the chemistry holds. And sweet potato doesn't work alone. None of the things that actually matter for circulation and leg strength work in isolation. So here's how I've built it into a system. I start every morning with protein first, 2 or 3 eggs before anything else. Not because eggs are magic, but because protein at the start of the day triggers a hormone called GLP-1 that slows glucose entry and stabilizes the baseline your sweet potato is going to interact with later. The order matters. The eggs come first. After dinner, any dinner, I walk for 10 minutes. Not a mile, not a gym session, 10 minutes around the block or around the house. Research from George Washington University found that a short walk after a meal activates a glucose transporter in muscle tissue called GLUT4 that pulls glucose directly from the bloodstream into muscle cells, independent of insulin. Your insulin resistance doesn't block it. The movement itself is the trigger. 10 minutes activates it. The sweet potato's slow release gives your legs fuel. The walk signals the muscle to use it. And I sleep in a cool room, between 65 and 67 degrees, because the overnight window is when your body does its repair work on those microvessels and nerves. And research from Stanford has linked poor sleep quality and elevated room temperature to increased cortisol at 2 a.m., which signals the liver to dump stored glucose and raise fasting numbers even after a clean day of eating. The bedroom temperature is part of the system. Protein first, cool sweet potato, 10-minute walk, cool room. Each one has a mechanism. Together they address the leg problem from 4 different biological angles simultaneously. A woman reached out through this channel last month. She's 79, been managing blood sugar for 12 years, lives in Georgia. Her description of her legs was almost word for word what I used to feel. The morning heaviness, the reluctance to trust the stairs, the slow loss of the distance she used to walk without thinking. She'd been doing everything she was told, taking her medication, watching her diet in general, but nobody had ever told her about microvessel glycation. Nobody had ever told her about resistant starch. Nobody had given her the mechanism. She started the cooled sweet potato 3 weeks before writing to me. She was cautious in how she described it. She didn't make any dramatic claims, but what she said was, "The morning heaviness has changed. Not gone," she wrote. Changed. Less waiting. Less weight. That's the beginning. That's the direction. I want to say something directly to you now because I think the stakes deserve directness. Look at the people you know at your age. Some of them still move freely. They still get up from chairs without bracing. They walk their neighborhood. They carry groceries. They go upstairs and come back down without a second thought. And some of them don't. Some of them are in chairs they didn't plan to be in. Some of them need help for things they used to do automatically. What separated them? Genetics plays a role, yes, but I've been watching this for over 30 years, and I'll tell you what I've seen. The ones who kept moving, kept paying attention to the right things at the right time. Not miracle interventions, the right small mechanisms, consistently, before the window closed. The legs don't announce when the window is closing. They whisper. The heaviness in the morning. The railing you grab without thinking. The distance that gets shorter without you deciding to shorten it. The whisper is the signal. Pay attention to it now, while there's still time to answer it. If your feet burn at night, or go numb, or feel cold, no matter how many socks you wear, please don't ignore it. I almost did, and I'm 80 years old. For years I told myself it was just age, the tingling, the heaviness in my legs climbing the stairs. But it wasn't age. It was my blood sugar quietly damaging the nerves and the circulation in my legs, and almost nobody warned me in time. If you let it keep going, those little signals turn into something you can't undo. I wasn't willing to lose my feet or my independence. So I started doing one thing every single day to help support healthy blood sugar and protect my legs. I'll show you exactly what in this video. And if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. I want to stop here and say something I mean completely. I've been managing blood sugar for 15 years. I know what it feels like to do everything you're told and still sit on the edge of the bed in the morning wondering if your legs are going to cooperate. To grip the railing coming down the stairs and feel something between frustration and fear. To cancel a walk because the heaviness in the calves just isn't worth the argument that day. What I've described in this video, the sweet potato, the protein first, the 10-minute walk, the cool room, those aren't theories I read about once. I've been running that system for 4 years. Not because I believed it immediately, because I got desperate enough to pay attention. And here's what I want you to understand about that system, because this is the part your doctor genuinely doesn't have time to explain, even if they wanted to. Each of those 4 pieces works on a different mechanism. The sweet potato addresses the glucose spike and the vascular inflammation simultaneously. The protein at breakfast activates GLP-1 before your cells have absorbed a single gram of carbohydrate. The 10-minute walk after dinner pulls glucose into muscle tissue through a pathway that bypasses your insulin resistance entirely. The cool bedroom gives your cortisol clock a chance to stay quiet instead of flooding your bloodstream at 2 in the morning before you've even opened your eyes. No single one of those is enough. That's the part that took me too long to understand. I spent years doing one thing at a time, adding a food here, taking one away there, and wondering why the numbers stayed stubborn. The reason they stayed stubborn is that glucose metabolism in an older body isn't one problem. It's 4 problems running at the same time, feeding each other. You need 4 solutions running at the same time. Now that system covers a great deal, but there's a layer underneath it. The microvessel environment, the nerve tissue itself, the inflammatory signals that have been running for years before the legs started complaining that food and movement can support but cannot fully address alone. That's where the conversation about additional support becomes worth having. Not instead of the system, as part of it. Alongside your doctor, with your numbers, with your specific history. I want to be direct with you about what that looks like because the word supplement gets thrown around carelessly in spaces like this, and I won't do that to you. What I'm pointing to is something that targets the same mechanisms this video has been about, circulation, nerve environment, glucose metabolism, in a form that's designed to complement a food-first approach rather than replace it. I didn't find it quickly. I spent time looking at what the actual mechanisms were, what the research said, what was being sold for results it couldn't deliver versus what was built around the biology I'd been reading. And when I found something I felt I could stand behind honestly, I wanted to make it available to people watching this channel. If you made it this far, you already understand more about your own legs than most people your age ever will. That matters. You know now that the burning, the numbness, the cold feet, they trace back to one thing: blood sugar slowly working against your nerves and circulation. And you know the goal isn't a miracle. It's protecting your ability to stand, to walk, to stay independent. That's why, alongside everything I showed you today, I use a simple daily support to help keep my blood sugar in a healthy range, so my legs keep carrying me where I want to go. I put the free presentation in the description below. Go watch it. And as always, keep working with your doctor. This supports your routine. It doesn't replace it. Before you go, here's your starting point. Tonight, buy 1 sweet potato. Cook it plain. Let it cool fully overnight. Tomorrow morning, eat 2 eggs first. Then add the sweet potato cold or at room temperature. After dinner, set a 10-minute timer and walk. This week, turn your thermostat down to 66 degrees before bed. That's it. That's the beginning. 4 actions: no prescription, no gym, no exotic ingredient you can't find or afford. And if something in this video landed for you, drop the word legs in the comments. Just that word. Because I want to know how many of you are dealing with this. The heaviness, the weakness, the circulation that stopped working the way it used to, and never got an explanation for why. You have one now.